Welcome to the deep dive. So, we've sifted through the sources you sent, and one piece really stood out, this personal reflection from the Gaia Carmel YouTube channel.
Yeah, it's a fascinating take.
Wow.
We've basically distilled it down into this single punchy insight about, well, sunlight and how we react to it.
Exactly. And I want you to think about that classic summer moment.
Yeah?
You know, you're inside, nice and cool, maybe running errands.
Air conditioning blasting.
Right. And then you step outside into that, midday sun, boom, it hits you. It's not just hot, it's almost
Like aggressive, right?
a physical shock.
It really is a total sensory overload. That sudden, intense shift makes you just want to dive back inside or find shade immediately.
But here's where our source today throws a curveball. It suggests something really counterintuitive.
Totally. The idea is basically that how we experience that intensity, that shock, isn't just about the sun's power. It might be more about our, well, internal state.
That's our mission today, then. To unpack this very personal theory, it suggests we can actually change how our bodies absorb and feel intense sun.
And it hinges on this one very specific action involving our environment.
Yeah, it kind of flies in the face of basic physics, doesn't it? Which is why we really need to dig into the how and why behind the claim.
Definitely.
So, here's the question for you listening. We all know that going from a cool house straight into blazing sun feels jarring, right? But think about this. Have you ever maybe spent a good while just sitting in deep shade, under a big tree perhaps?
Like relaxing, reading.
Yeah, for an hour, maybe more. And then when you stepped out into the sun afterwards, did it feel different? Less harsh, maybe?
That slight difference, or maybe not so slight difference in how you perceive it, that's the core of this whole idea.
The source isn't just saying you cooled down.
No, not at all. It's suggesting something much more fundamental. It talks about becoming one with nature.
Okay.
And that this state, achieved through being in the shade, somehow changes your physiological perception. It sort of dampens the sun's shock factor.
So it's like adjusting yourself, your internal settings, so the sun doesn't register as this big bad force anymore.
Pretty much. It's less about the sun changing and more about you changing how you receive it.
All right, let's get specific. Section 1. The actual rule, or maybe the conditions, laid out in the source, because they are surprisingly strict.
Yeah, and the first thing that jumps out is how it just sort of dismisses the external factors.
Right. It basically says, look, it doesn't matter how hot the day actually is.
Or how strong the sun feels objectively. You know, UV index 5, UV index 11. Irrelevant, according to this theory.
Which is kind of wild. So the external force isn't the key variable here.
Apparently not. The focus shifts entirely to the action the person takes.
And that action is you have to deliberately go outside, find some natural shade, like under a tree or something, and sit there for at least an hour, maybe more.
An hour or more.
Yeah.
That's a key detail. It's not a quick 5-minute cool down.
No, exactly. If it was just about lowering your body temperature, you'd think, I don't know, 15 minutes would do it, right?
Or just getting wet, maybe. But the hour-plus requirement suggests something else is going on. It feels more like a deep acclimatization, a preconditioning.
A recalibration, maybe? Like you're resetting something internally.
That's a good way to put it. It's not a quick fix.
Okay, so you put in the time, this hour or more in the shade. What's the payoff? What's the result supposed to be?
Well, the claim is pretty erratic. It says that after this sustained period in the shade, when you do go back into the direct sunlight, the experience is totally different. You actually absorb it differently. You feel it differently.
How so? Like it's just less hot.
Less hot, yes, but also less intense, less strong. The source describes it as suddenly not feeling as overwhelming as it did before you did the shade time.
Even though the sun itself hasn't changed one bit?
Precisely. The sun's cranking out the same energy, the same heat, but your subjective experience of that intensity has been dialed way down.
It's like you've developed some kind of internal filter or shield.
That's the idea. The intensity is still there objectively, but it doesn't land the same way subjectively.
So if I'm tracking this, the actual temperature outside doesn't matter as much as my internal state, which I've intentionally shifted by sitting in the shade for an hour.
That's the core assertion, yeah.
Which immediately makes you ask, why?
Yeah.
What is supposedly happening in that hour of shade time that rewires how I feel the sun?
Okay, yeah, the why. This takes us into the, let's say, the theoretical heart of the source material. It's very much based on this person's experience and interpretation.
Right, it's a personal theory.
And it centers on this concept of energetic alignment. The idea is that while you're sitting there, present in nature,
in the shade,
you start to, and this is their term, absorb energy from your surroundings, with the trees, the earth, the air.
Okay, absorb energy. We need to pause on that. Are they talking literal, like, physics energy, or is this more metaphorical, like absorbing calm? Or
Good question. Based on the context, it seems much more metaphorical or perhaps experiential. It's about achieving a kind of profound sensory shift.
towards what, though? What's the goal of absorbing this energy?
The goal, as stated, is to reach a state of deep unity, to become one with nature. That specific phrase is used.
Become one with nature, okay.
And that state of unity, that feeling of connection, is supposedly the key. That's what allows you to react differently to the sun afterwards. It's like you're no longer separate from nature fighting the sun, but part of nature receiving it.
Okay. I think that's the crucial distinction here, the aha moment, maybe. Because if you come at this purely scientifically, you're thinking thermoregulation, body cooling, right?
Standard explanation.
But the source is saying, nope, it's not really about cooling down. It's about achieving this psychophysiological state, this unity. And that's what grants you immunity, or at least resistance, to the initial shock of the sun.
Exactly. It reframes the whole experience from a physical battle to an energetic alignment.
You know, it reminds me a little bit, though, obviously in a different context, of things like forest bathing, Shinrin-yoku.
That's a really interesting connection. There's definitely overlap in the idea of sustained immersion in a natural environment having profound effects.
Because studies on forest bathing show real physiological changes, right? Lower cortisol, lower heart rate.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It pushes the body towards a parasympathetic state, the rest and digest mode, as opposed to fight or flight.
So maybe, and this is just us speculating beyond the source a bit, maybe the absorbing energy part is a way of describing that deep relaxation state.
It's possible. If you spend an hour sitting quietly in a calm, low-stimulus natural setting, you are effectively meditating. Whether you call it that or not, you're down-regulating your nervous system.
And if your nervous system is already calm, already in that rest state,
Then maybe stepping into the sun, which is usually a sudden, harsh stimulus that could trigger fight or flight.
right, that jolt.
Maybe that jolt just doesn't register as strongly. Or your system doesn't react with the same defensive alarm bells. The shade time acts as a sort of buffer, a preconditioner for your nervous system.
That makes a certain kind of intuitive sense, actually. Less mystical, perhaps, but still profound. Okay, so if the mechanism is achieving this state, whether you call it unity with nature or deep parasympathetic calm through that hour plus in the shade, then we can really see why the transition into the sun matters so much, why the starting point makes all the difference.
Exactly. Let's contrast the two paths the source highlights. Path A, let's call it the nature-adjusted transition.
This is after you've done your hour in the shade.
Right. You spent that time, you've supposedly absorbed the energy, achieved that unity. The feeling inside, according to the source, is something like, okay, I am already part of this. I'm part of nature now.
So you feel integrated before you even step into the sun.
Precisely. And because of that internal feeling, that pre-existing state of alignment, when you then move into the direct sunlight,
It doesn't feel like an attack.
it doesn't feel like an aggressive external force hitting you. It's just another part of the environment that you now feel connected to. The source says, the sun is not strong for me in that moment, not like it was before.
The perception of its strength changes.
Yes, the shockwave effect, that jarring intensity, is largely absent.
Okay, now let's contrast that with transition B, the one we all know. The house to sun shift.
This is when you go directly from inside your, climate-controlled box.
Your bubble.
Yeah, your bubble. You're carrying the internal state of the house separate, maybe artificially cool, definitely disconnected from the outside world energetically.
You haven't done the shade time. You haven't done the alignment process.
None of it. You just dart out. The source uses a phrase that translates roughly to darting out from the house to the sun.
Okay.
And when you make that abrupt transition from separation to sudden, full exposure,
Wham. You feel the full force.
the sun hits you with that unmitigated shock we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Because you're moving from a state of essentially artificial protection right into the raw element, and your system reacts defensively. Fight or flight kicks in instantly.
So the key takeaway here for you, the listener, seems to be this. Your starting point matters immensely.
Hugely. According to this theory, the environment you're in just before you encounter the sun, whether it's the insulated house or the natural shade, fundamentally determines how strong, how aggressive, how hot that sun feels.
It's not a small difference they're describing. It's felt entirely differently.
Yeah, the whole physical experience gets filtered through your psychological and physiological state, which has been primed by that preceding environment. So if we boil this down, this unique insight from the source offers, well, an anecdotal theory, right? It suggests that spending sustained, intentional time in natural shade isn't just about cooling off.
It's acting as a kind of deep sensory preconditioner.
Exactly. By encouraging this shift, whether you call it physiological calm or energetic unity with nature, it fundamentally changes how your system processes intense external stimuli, like sunlight.
It turns something that might feel like an assault into something more tolerable. Maybe even just neutral.
Or at least integrated, yeah. Less of a shock.
It's a really intriguing idea. It suggests that maybe that initial jarring feeling of intense heat has less to do with the actual temperature.
And more to do with the abruptness of the transition.
Yeah, and a nervous system that's basically been caught off guard, that hasn't been given a chance to sort of align itself with the outdoor world first. So here's something to mull over, a final thought based on all this. If, as this source suggests, we can potentially alter a really fundamental physical sensation, like intense solar heat.
Something we usually think of as purely objective.
Right. If we can change how we feel that, just by this simple intentional shift, spending an hour sitting quietly in the shade,
Yeah.
then what else? What other maybe everyday stresses or negative physical feelings that we just accept might actually be influenced or even caused by our state of being disconnected, by being segregated in our little boxes?
What else are we maybe failing to absorb properly or integrate smoothly just because we're always darting too quickly between these separate environments?
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Maybe think about the power of just being present intentionally in your environment the next time you hesitate before stepping out into the light. What might change?